Hello, good afternoon. My name is Toyin Morafa. Welcome to another edition of Voice of the Voiceless. With me today, I've got a very wonderful young lady. Oh, in fact, she's astounding. Her name is Sussie Retty. I'm not going to go too much into details. I'll allow her to introduce herself and talk to you about the things that she does. Welcome, Miss Retty.
Thank you so much, Toyin, and thank you for the young part. We're friends for life now. Let me see. Like you said, my name's Sussie Retty. I'm a qualified social worker, specialising in working with children and families, which includes teenagers, right until they come into care, till they leave the care system.
Right.
And I've done that for a number of years.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
How many, give or take? How many years would you say?
Give or take, I started off in residential care, which is working in children homes, and I specialised on challenging young teenagers with challenging behaviour.
Right.
And I did that for 7 years,
Right.
and then I qualified at Middlesex University and became a qualified social worker, and worked in still remained in children and families,
Right.
but focused on leaving care. So
Oh,
young
I see.
people leaving the care system. But because I worked in London Borough Barnet all through, the young people were from a certain time I worked within the London Borough Barnet, but I stayed there for 12 years.
Oh,
So the
right.
young people I was working with within residential care, by the time I became a social worker, I now became a social worker to some of them.
Oh,
So we had a long-standing
yeah.
relationship.
Oh,
Yeah.
beautiful. And one of the reasons why I'm excited to have my young lady here today is because normally we do focus on guns and knife and youth gang violence, but today we're going to talk about sexual grooming among the youth. And the reason why we're doing this is because we know that a lot of the young ones now, one of the reasons why they go into gang is just the anger, from being groomed. So without further ado, I'll be going into details and asking you questions. First and foremost, how do the groomers, how do they build a relationship with all these vulnerable young kids or young adults?
Most of the time, they are already a member of the family. As in, when I say a member, people have to understand that young people are sexually abused by people who are closest to them.
Right.
It's very rare that they're sexually abused by strangers. In
Right.
short, I did my dissertation, my final essay in uni on sexual abuse, and as of that point of time, it was 8% of sexual abusers are strangers to the family.
Oh, I see.
So I always feel very strong that people have to understand that a brother, an uncle, a cousin,
Right.
a family friend, a father, a mother, a sister, a niece, they can abuse
Right.
a member of the family, a
The
younger member of
relation.
the family, yeah.
I see.
Yeah.
All right. So how do you really recognize the signs? Because like you said, it's a dominant figure in like the young person's life. So what are the signs that the young person can exhibit for us to know that they're going through this?
Do you know what? If I'm going to talk about the signs, I'm going to deviate you a bit, and let's talk about how these relationships formed.
Right.
Is that okay?
Yeah, that's fine.
So, a lot of them already have a relationship going on. And this relationship, once the perpetrator has ensured that this young person has a bit of trust in them, they
Right.
build on that relationship. And they build on that relationship by buying them things and
Right.
saying, don't tell no one, giving them money, don't tell no one. You could have a troubled young person, and you could have a parent say to a cousin, an older brother, an uncle, please, can you talk to so-so? They seem to have a good relationship with you. Now, if the person is a groomer, that is an easy way for them to get into grooming
Right.
this child or young person.
Sorry to cut you off. So that means that maybe the mother or the father, they're experiencing problems with a child, So the person they're actually turning to help them with the person, with the child, can actually be the groomer. Is that...
Remember, the father could be the abuser.
Right.
The mother could be abuser. Very rare do women abuse kids. It's quite rare. It's mainly men. I apologise to men for that, but that's what statistics says. But so it could be that it's a brother. I've worked with cases where there was a brother abusing his sisters, his younger sisters, and he was 15 at the time, and the sisters I think were 7 and 8.
Oh, right.
So you have to just be aware that anyone within the family can be abuser, and it sounds complicated. Nobody wants to believe that a member of their family would abuse someone within their own family, not to talk of outside of their family. But the reality is that it does happen.
Right.
So, sometimes those relationships are already formed. Sometimes they could be new relationships. It could be a coach of a football club. It could be the priest in the church.
Right.
It could be the man in the corner shop that is close to the family.
I see.
So it could be anyone that is close to the family.
Anybody.
And they could be forming new relationships with them, but usually they're relationships that have already been established.
So what signs what signs can we look out for? Because obviously if everything is done in secret, or they're keeping them, swearing them to secrecy, obviously there should be some signs that they'll be exhibiting, but we might overlook it. So what do you think are the symptoms that parents and guardians should look out for before they start, before we start linking it to the gangs, before they start, acting out and joining gangs?
You see, there are obvious signs, and sometimes there aren't any signs.
I see.
Now the obvious signs are where you have a case of a young child who you sit on uncle's lap. No, they don't want to sit on uncle's lap, and you're forcing them to sit on uncle's lap. Say hello to uncle, and all of a sudden they don't want to say hello to uncle. Now, a lot of this behaviour, sometimes it's easy for parents to say, oh, my child is acting out. But the truth of the matter is your child acting out? Has something happened? And, sometimes it's horrible to have to think that way.
Right.
And I realized that because when I went into, when I first started in social work as a residential social worker, I didn't have kids. And I was exposed to all these different scenarios. I was working with, kids from different types of family, rich, poor, dysfunctional, functional families. And by the time I had my kids, I became paranoid, even with my own cousins, my own friends, because I knew that anyone can be a potential perpetrator. Sadly, the fact of the matter is a high number of perpetrators have been sexually abused themselves.
All right. So they just going through the same cycle.
They become an abuser. So it's, research tells us that that victims can become abusers later on.
Right. Okay. So how do you think they gain power over a child? Because obviously it's not all the time, but sometimes a child knows what's right from wrong. Instincts will tell you that this is not meant to happen. But how do abusers actually gain power over a child? Because I just want to go into this, because we understand that a lot of these children, they do run away from home and end up using, thinking that the gangs, taking drugs and thinking that the gangs is like their extended family. And we're trying to stop this and at least be able to provide a support network, something constructive for them to be able to work with. So how do you think abusers do gain power over them?
I think they've gained, a lot of abusers notice vulnerability in people. Now, you take a scenario where you've got an uncle. Do I say this, and I feel comfortable doing this.
Right.
I say to people, a lot of women have been sexually molested, sexually abused in one way or the other, but have never ever spoken to it as kids.
Right.
Especially when we grow up in a third world country where you have these things about level of respect, how you can talk to an adult, what you can say to an adult.
That's right.
That creates a barrier. So when that barrier is created, all of a sudden that child can't tell you what they're going through, or they feel that they could be accused of being a liar.
Right.
So why I said I go into that, I experienced it as a child from one of my father's friends.
Right.
And I never told him, and I could remember that day very clearly. I think I was about 15. I was about 15. And my father had come home to get something with his friend, and, you know, I opened the door for him, and he was like, oh, you know, uncle comes in, hello uncle. Uncle's like, how are you, Susie? Fine, thank you. Then my dad says to me, I'm just going into my room to go and get something. Like, okay. As soon as my dad walks out the passage, my dad's friend, who I'd known for years, was like, Susie, you're growing up. Come and give me a kiss. And I'm like, whoa. And I'm just like, no, uncle. He's like, no, come and give me a kiss, quick, before your dad comes. I'm like, no, uncle. Now, I was lucky because I could step back. And then my dad comes and my uncle resumes, my dad's friend, because he was a friend, normal, as a
pattern.
Now, I didn't see myself, I was in shock, but I didn't see myself in a position to say, hold on, Dad, do you know what just happened?
Right. Right. Yeah.
Because my uncle could have, my dad's friend, sorry, could have turned around and said, what? What did you just say? And I could be deemed as a liar. So when there is that communication barrier with parents and the kids don't feel comfortable about telling you everything, then it's so easy for abusers to slip into that gap that is there.
Yeah.
You have created a environment for an abuser to abuse successfully because of that gap that you have left behind.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. That is really powerful. Once again, this is Voice of the Voiceless. My name is Toyin Morafa. I'm the anchor for the show. I'm here with Miss Sussie Retty. And what we're dealing with right now is an eye-opener, because a lot of us, especially like you said, in the third world country, these are not things we really acknowledge, nor things we speak openly about. But for the sake of this kids, I believe now is the time for everybody to be aware about it and try and help them and speak openly about it. Now, this brings me to a point with the groomers, and when they force these kids to take pictures or try to blackmail them to take pictures, and they start posting it online or start using it to blackmail them, you know, to be able to do things for them. How do you think such kids like that, vulnerable kids like that, how do you think they should deal with it? And what other signs, or if they know that they've been exposed online, what's the best way to help them?
You see, you have to, like you just said, you have to find out that it's happening. Now, I think very few abusers would post things online because they know what it could come down to, especially in this day and age where things that you don't expect to go viral can go viral on the internet over that, and it could be easily traced back to them because, you know, the police are on their game. They're on top of their game when it comes to internet, IT, information technology. I've lost my focus there. What was that question again? Sorry. Sorry.
Yeah, I understand completely. What we were talking about, you know, most of these groomers that actually take the pictures of these kids and threaten to post them online, and or actually do post them online.
That was it. Yeah. So I said, they won't. They usually will not do it, but they will threaten the kids with it. Now, there's one thing that a lot of people, I think, are not in touch with. Victims can fall in love or feel some feeling or some responsibility towards their abuser.
Right.
That happens a lot of the time. Kids can also enjoy being abused. You know, it is...
what? Can you explain that a bit for the viewers, because they may not really understand that concept?
Yeah, so when kids are young, they are sexually innocent. But sometimes they are sexually curious, don't forget.
Oh, right.
So they could be in primary school. I could remember when I was 5, I could remember this little boy, and I'll never forget his name. Andrew was his name. And we were somewhere outside London. And I remember one day he goes to me, "Oi, Susie, show me yours and I'll show you mine."
Oh, right.
Now, I done a runner. But it could have been something else, and I'll be like, okay, let me show you mine then.
Okay.
You know, because he opened his pants, that was it, and we were in the playground.
Yeah.
So, but kids are inquisitive, so you could have the kids that will be inquisitive, and they might enjoy being touched.
Right, right.
It's foreign to them, so they don't know that it is wrong.
Right.
Now, and this is where groomers succeed, is when they start grooming the child from a young age.
True.
Now, you think of a father abusing a child, and they start gradually, or stepfathers. A lot of the time, don't forget, there's that blood relationship is not there, so you find that there are stepfathers that abuse their kids.
The kids, that's true.
You know, so
we get a lot back home as well.
yes, yes, and I even heard a story of one lady in here in the UK, and she went to her mum's friend, young lady, she was 18 by this time, and told the friend's mum of how the stepfather had been abusing her for about 4 years. So from when she was about 14, when she started developing.
Right.
And the friend's response to her was, don't tell your mum. This could break up the family.
Oh, wow.
You understand?
Yeah.
These type of things happen. So such an auntie, to me, has an allowed abuser to continue grooming.
Absolutely.
And to get away with it, and
Yes.
to establish that relationship. Now, you imagine if that child is much younger. I've seen parents deny and say their child is a devil, or their child wants to break up their relationship. I remember a particular family I worked with, and the mother's response to it was, I can't believe she has done this to us. I brought her a horse, the horse is in the stable, and this was a rich family. I've done this for her, I've done that for her. And I can't believe she's always been jealous because she wants her father to be here, and she doesn't want her stepfather. You know, that is the reality of the other adults, who is responsible for the child, not what, you know, you tell me, how many parents, how many mothers would want to hear their child saying, my father touched me. But we know it happens.
Yeah.
But no woman is going to want to hear that and agree with it.
And agree with
and
it.
think that, wow, this is the end of my marriage, and people outside are going to hear this. You know, so the abuser gets away with it.
So most of these women, well, I'm not saying all of them.
Not all.
Yeah, so would they rather support their husbands, you know, blindly, rather than accept the fact that this man should not be allowed around their children? Or is it a shame they don't want people to know, or they just want to stay married?
I think it is a bit of both. It depends on the person's upbringing. So you have those, the thought of them, another marriage breaking down, or the shame of it. They would prefer to keep it in the family, which to me now allows, it kind of acknowledges to the perpetrator, I know you're doing this and I'm not going to do anything about it.
Absolutely.
So there are so many different reasons. Some do not want to believe it. You'll be surprised to find out that some parents have been abused before.
Right.
You know, there are so many different reasons. But by the time you sit down and you now explore it in a professional environment with that person, if that person is open to it, you can sometimes get to the bottom of why and how.
And how?
Sometimes you can't.
That's true.
And sometimes they will never ever accept it. And sometimes they're ready to let that child go to save their marriage. You know, there are some things that sometimes when you don't think of those things, you don't believe they can happen.
That's true. Absolutely.
It happens.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
In fact, if it was possible, my jaw would be dropping by now. My mouth would be wide open.
Yeah.
Because just like everybody else, I'm being educated. A lot of these things we're not aware of, and that's the reason why I thought, you know, this would be an interesting concept to discuss, especially in regards to, you know, sometimes you have all those kids. One of the reasons why they take them to county lines, from what we heard in the newspapers, is because across county lines, to sell drugs and other things, is because maybe the groomers have managed to have a chance to get their the naked photos or made them do things that they've already got online, then after this, it's easy for them to be blackmailed, and they can go across county lines. Now, we have...
Can I just interrupt it?
Yes.
There's also another side to it. Sometimes you have a child that does not get what they perceive as love from the family, from their parents, and then they see another adult giving it. And some young people can mistake sex for love. So because they've got an adult making sexual advances towards them, they think that that is a sign that that person loves them. But it's not. It's that person abusing them.
Is abusing them. Is exploiting their vulnerabilities. So, but when you have children like that, you know, a lot of them get angry. A lot of them they act out. A lot of them they see the gang as their family. A lot of them go into crime, you know. So how can we help people like that? How can we provide rehabilitation, support, and maybe general, well, I hesitate to use love, but support and rehabilitation for children like those?
From my experience, usually, most of the time, kids who are sexually abused and don't talk about it usually become quite challenging in their behavior when they hit puberty, because all of a sudden it's hit them what is happening. The hormones are rushing in, you know, things are changing, and I can't explain why, but once they hit puberty, sometimes, a lot of the time, like when I was working within the care system, we get a lot of kids that are acting out, and when you get to the bottom of it, sometimes the level of abuse that you hear about is actually scary. It's actually frightening. Now, when they now act out, you won't know why they're acting out, because being sexually abused or being abused is not the only reason for a child to go into a gang. A child can go into a gang for so many reasons, from peer group pressure, from wanting friends, and that's the only friends they can get, from wanting what they call street cred, so they think that that is part of them getting street cred, from looking for a different family because they haven't got one at home, and those are the friends that they now connect with, from having violent tendencies within their mind, and that helps them act out their violent tendencies. So there are so many reasons. Now, to get to the bottom of it, you need to know that your child is in a gang to begin with, because, you know, let's be honest, like I said before, no parent wants to say my child is a member of a gang.
That's true.
Some kids are very good at hiding their outside activities from their inside activities. So they get into their house, their behavior is brilliant, they are the best child you could ever think of. But as soon as they hit those streets, they become that monster, because on the streets they're in a gang.
That's true.
Some kids do not feel comfortable with it, but do it. Some kids feel comfortable with it. That is the reality.
That's true.
The ones that don't feel comfortable with it usually are the ones that will act out. You will see difference in their behavior. A lot of the time you might not be able to explain why their behavior is different, and you have to be able to have those skills of exploring. And a lot of parents are not equipped.
That's true.
You know, nobody ever thinks I'm giving birth to my child and my child is going to become a gang member.
Absolutely.
That is the last thing you think.
You start thinking.
So a lot of parents are not equipped to see it, and a lot of the time it only comes to light if something horrible happens, if they begin to get scared of the type of people they're hanging around with, and the things they're being expected to do. They get scared, and all of a sudden they need to talk to someone. If they are caught by the police, if they're bragging about it.
That's true.
You know, there are so many different reasons. You know, and you have to be able to explore those different reasons. You know, I don't feel any negative feelings towards some families that have young people that are gang members if they don't realise it, if the signs are not there.
I'm not there, yeah.
A lot of people, don't forget, when their kids start acting out and start behaving aggressive, rude, not listening, they say, oh, it's puberty.
That's true.
Or it's this country, it's what they've been exposed to.
That's true.
And, you know, the last thing most parents will think about is my child is in a gang.
That's true.
Yeah.
That's true. And actually, I just see things from a different point of view. Well, I won't say different point of view, because I do meet a lot of young people on streets, and believe you me, they can be the nicest and the kindest. They're very, very polite. You know, oh, excuse me, ma'am, yes, miss, that miss. But on the other side of the coin, it's a bit unbelievable. These same kids are like proper gang members, and they're carrying guns, they're carrying knives, they're carrying everything. They're doing, you know, bad things, hurtful things to members of the society.
Yeah. Which
brings me to another question. As of right now, social services, are they equipped to deal with these vulnerable adults? You know, we have a lot of things like underfunding, a lot of things, you know, so many things have been cut.
Do you know what? Forget about underfunding and forget about cuts.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, as a social worker, there is a limit to what you can do with a child. So as okay, let me go down to as a residential social worker, because you see, as a social worker, I end up doing a lot of paperwork. The type of contact that I would have with my young person, I have to see my young person at least once every 13 weeks.
I see.
So what happens in between that time? My young person is either still at home, placed in a foster care placement, placed in a residential unit, or living with family. So I, as a social worker, I can only act on what reports come back to me from the carers of this young person.
Right.
Now, as a residential social worker, you practically live with these kids, because for me, as a residential social worker, I used to do double shifts. So I would start my shift at 3 o'clock, finish at 10 or 11. When I finish at 10 or 11, I would sleep within the building. Then I would wake up in the morning, and it's me that these kids wake up to. So preferably, they wake up to, they go to bed with me in the building. They wake up, we're their corporate parents. That is what we are described as, their corporate parents.
I see.
So we see them going in and out. We see whatever behaviour they came with, we can judge any changes that can take place. You're restricted, because as a residential worker, I'm not allowed to touch a child. I'm not allowed to pull you back unless I can justify that they were putting others at risk, or they were putting me at risk. Or they were putting somebody else at risk.
Yeah.
So, and then all we can do is talk to them and report to the police. You become desensitized to it after some time.
That's right.
Because you know what your limits are. Because at the end of the day, not only am I looking after this young person who is very volatile, I also have to make sure I keep my job and I don't get suspended.
That's true.
Because a young person has made a report against me. And that's one of the things with being in social work. A young person reports you, you are suspended automatically, and they investigate later. But the first priority is to keep that young person safe. And so if a young person goes and says, oh, so hit me when we were in her car and she hit me, they will say to that young person, can you write a report? And they'll write the report, and the next thing is I would be suspended. Now,
sorry to cut you off. So even if this young person has got like challenging behaviors, maybe he's trying to run away from home, trying to go and join his or her extended family, they will still suspend you automatically.
Okay, let me give you an example, personal example again. Do you know what? I'll tell you what, I've got a number of my young people who I used to work with who are now my friends on Facebook.
Really?
They're now parents. Yes, yes. So let me give you an example. I was doing a night shift one time, and I had a young person who he started off when it was bedtime. He now went and brought his radio and put it in the passage, because we live, you know, we accommodated, I think it was about 8 young people in the building that I worked. So at bedtime, all the bedrooms are upstairs. They're all like facing each other. You know, they've got lovely bedrooms. There's a passage. So you, as the awakened night officer, you'll settle them down for bed, and you'll stick in the passage and make sure everyone settles and they're not sneaking into each other's rooms, you know, doing whatever. So this young person now decided to bring out his radio and put it on full blast in the passage, and I'm like, no, you can't do that. Other people want to sleep, so there's no way I'm allowing you to put your radio out here. Now what he did was, he wouldn't listen to me. But I had the control, in the sense that I could switch off the power down, for the plugs down, because that's the way that it was set out. And I remember going to the other young people and saying to them, right guys, I need your support here, because clearly so-so is not going to bed. He's bent on disturbing you. Do you guys mind? But I hope you guys don't mind, but I'm going to have to switch the power off, and that will cut his radio off. So what he did was, I went upstairs, I switched it off, and as I came upstairs, he threw his radio down at me, the speakers. Ooh. So, and I just moved. I moved, and so it went flying down the stairs. And then I got a whole lot of abuse, verbal abuse from him, and then he just walked into it, slammed his door, and went to bed. To me, I had to write a report, so I picked up the radio, put it in a court, I put it in the office, wrote my report. When the person, whoever was taking over from me, came in, they took over from me, I told them what happened, I went home. And then I left work at 8 o'clock, and then, let's say about 1 o'clock, I was due to go into work. I think I was meant to start at 10 o'clock. And then I think about 1 o'clock, my manager called me and was like, oh, Susie, could you come in early, please? And I was like, oh, come in early. I was working in North London, living in South London. I was like, Sharon, I really don't want to, can you just tell me what you need to say on the phone? Okay, need to tell you that so-and-so has made a complaint against you, said that you threw his radio down the stairs and you slapped him, so we're going to have to suspend you while investigating. Really? That is the reality. That is the risk that a lot of people don't realise that social workers go through. So that is what a lot. So I was suspended, and I was suspended for 6 months while they investigated.
6 months?
Yeah, but trust yours truly, I went on a holiday and did everything. I was suspended with pay. I knew I hadn't done anything wrong. Do you know? I really couldn't be, but you know, I got to that point, I couldn't be bothered, and I was like, you know what, you guys do what you want. If you can't get hold of me, send me a letter. I could have to Nigeria for a few weeks. But that is the reality. You understand? I know a social worker. We had 2 young people that closed down a whole unit, reported to an outer body that all the members of staff in a residential unit was sexually abusing them, apart from the manager and I think it was the cleaner. And their own social worker, anytime they got into his car, he was touching them. Everybody was suspended. Really? I was lucky because I had just qualified and I had moved to my social work office, but I was still in contact. Everybody was suspended. The people you felt sorry for was the agency staff, because once you're suspended, you're not allowed to work. But if you're full-time, you're suspended with pay. If you're agency, you're not. Now, to me, the investigation went on for 18 months. I think that investigation went on for. And they had to go to the police station to be reporting to the police station, having interviews and everything. Now, what type of power does that give young people that you're looking after? All of a sudden, they know that if they say this, that, you have young people who will actually say, if you don't watch your back, I'll make sure you get suspended. You know, I've had young people say that to me before. Susie, if you don't watch yourself, I'm going to tell your manager so, and you're going to be suspended. You know, it happens.
So who can you blame for that laxity in the law?
No, you can't. That is the Children's Act. The Children's Act. You know, at the end of the day, this is the UK. You can't touch somebody. You can't touch your own. Well, you can smack your own child to a certain degree, but not to talk of go for somebody else's child. You'll be done for assault. It's no different from a robber coming into my house. and I hurt them, I get done, not them.
That's
So it's quite similar. So unfortunately, the young people that you work with within a foster care placement, within homes nowadays, within everywhere, young people know you're not allowed to touch me. And that to me gives them a false sense of security, because they end up using the laws that are made to protect them.
Yeah.
They end up using them against themselves.
Yes, to exploit
And so
people.
it does, you know, I've witnessed police being spat at by young people when they're trying to arrest them, receiving abuse from them. And it's like, you know, and the police would say to us, because we have to call them in if we are having problems, and they would say to us, couldn't do your job. And I look at the fact, well, I couldn't do your job, but then again, you've got handcuffs, because you've got the power to put them down and handcuff them. We don't have, if I even restrain a child in a very challenging situation, if I by mistake hurt that child, I would be told off, because they will say that I used unreasonable force. So you know, within social work, the technique within, as a social worker and as a residential worker within social work, you have to learn to develop a technique when you work with young people that they will recognize you as a form of authority to them and give you whatever level of respect they need to give you. But it doesn't happen all the time.
It doesn't happen all the time. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow, you learn new things every day. I'm telling you right now, there's a lot of things I'm learning. There are a lot of things. But one thing I like to touch again quickly is mental health, especially these children that are groomed, how it affects their mental health. And sometimes that's one of the reasons why they do carry knives. So how can we help them, or what intervention, as you know, as a youth worker, has been there, placed there for you to be able to offer them help?
You see, for you to be able to help them, first of all, you have to recognize it.
That's right.
Also, either they are referred to you, or it's something that you work with young people, so somewhere along the line you recognize that something is not right and this young person needs help. The young person, sometimes young people will come to you and say, I need help. These are the type of thoughts that I have. Some young people will not. So, you know, you have to take, it's hard for me to pinpoint a particular thing, because you have to take each young person as an individual, because every child comes with their different traits.
That's true.
And what works for child A might not work for child B, and what works for child B might not work for child C.
That's true.
So it is very important that anyone, in what I believe is that it's very important that they are trained to work with young people, because some young people can be very complicated.
That's true.
And you could find yourself in very complicated situations that you have to deal with.
So what signs can, obviously not all signs like you said are obvious.
Self-abusing, self-harm.
Yeah.
You would find people that are not confident within themselves, or are scared. Is that the right question? Am I answering the same way? So
the signs for the mental abuse.
Yes, so mental health is lack of self-esteem, eating disorders, anger. Sometimes because they can't cope with a situation, they get angry, and it's easier for them to lash out rather than deal with the situation. Like I said, lack of self-esteem, so kids that don't really talk, are very into themselves, are kind of lonely, they don't hang with other people, or they don't feel confident hanging with other people. Self-harming can go to certain extremes with young people, from them cutting themselves. I've had young people try and hang themselves, had young people slice their neck. You know, not bathing, sometimes being unkept is a sign. A change in the behavior. If you know the young person, you have to look for changes in their behavior and try and work out and understand why there is that change in their behavior.
So are these the signs that the groomers see? Are these the signs that show their vulnerability, and because of this, that's why they go for them? Do you reckon?
Well, now, remember that I said one thing. Most sexual abusers, in people that sexually abuse kids already know the child. So they've already formed a bond with the child. So because they know the child, they know what child they can groom and what child they can't groom.
I see.
So it's no different. If you ask me from an adult abuser, you will find that a lot of adult abusers will always find a victim because they see the signs in people.
That's true.
You know, they groom them. Them grooming them is them working on the child to get the child to do what they want. So if they're dealing with a child and all of a sudden the child is showing some form of resistance, an abuser, you know, a groomer and abuser will back.
All right.
Will take a step back. So usually groomers know when to step back and when they can continue. Or sometimes groomers will take that risk.
Wow, wow. This is, like I said, this is one of the reasons why I wanted to do this, because if you check the news, if you check everything, you get the reason why a lot of these young people are being introduced to gangs. They're using all these different things to lure them in. I wish I could talk to you the whole day. This has been so interesting. And right now, right in front of the viewers, I will be inviting you for another program. And make sure this time is going to be extended.
No problem, Toyin.
Between me and her now, we'll check it for another day. So you'll be seeing her very, very soon. But thank you very much, Sussie Retty.
No, thank you for the invite.
It's been very, very interesting. And it has been an eye-opener. Once again, thank you for watching Voice of the Voiceless. My name is Toyin Morafa, and I'll see you very soon.
My daughter-in-law. So how are you planning for my son's birthday? No, I have to cook up for her. Do you people have ogirisi there? No. It's okay. Okay, let me call you back. Mama Chiji, okay. Hi, sir. Wait a market. Please pack some ogirisi. I am going to visit my son. My daughter-in-law. It's arranged. But you must use original red oil to prepare the soup. What? I'll call you back. Mama Chijo, please include Isio Morocco. My daughter-in-law. Everything is now set. But don't forget that gold wristwatch I saw the last time I visited you.
Now you can talk until you tire for just 11 kobo of a second. Call all networks in Nigeria and 30 international destinations including US, UK, China, Canada and India for just 11 kobo per second. Dial *211# to activate.
That's Silk Boo-Boo.
The largest data network, Glow, grandmasters of data.
Tolu A. Akinyemi, a renowned poet, author and performer, brings to us Dead Cats Don't Meow, a metrical masterpiece which invokes love and respect for life. Dead Cats Don't Meow is his first published work and third collection in his poetry for the Discerning series after Dead Lions Don't Roar and Dead Dogs Don't Bark. Tolu shares his gift of writing with people far and wide. Recently, he received an endorsement as a writer with exceptional talent from the Arts Council England. Each poem examines a part of life, a sensation, a reaction, or an emotion. Individually, the verses breathe their own beat, while the collection knits together perfectly to present an idyllic anthology. Dead Cats Don't Meow is written to help you find your own voice in a world with a cacophony of voices. Join Tolu A. Akinyemi at one of the 4 events to celebrate the launch of Dead Cats Don't Meow. Thursday, April 4, 2019, 7 p.m. to 9:30 p.m. at the Poetry Cafe, the Poetry Society, 22 Betterton Street, Covent Garden, London. Saturday, April 13th, 2019, 4 p.m. to 8 p.m. at Museum Center, Function Room, 8 and 9 Marina Road, Onikan, Lagos, Nigeria. Thursday, May 2, 2019, 7 p.m. to 9:30 p.m. The Lead and Feel, 23 Westgate Road, Newcastle upon Tyne. Thursday, May 9, 2019, 5:45 p.m. to 7:15 p.m. The Avenue Library and Learning Center, 9 Victoria Avenue East, Blackley, Manchester. RSVP tolutoludo.com. Dead Cats Don't Meow is available at Waterstones, Barnes & Noble, eBay, Amazon, Patabar, and other outlets.
Heritage Television. Promoting African culture and heritage at its best. From talk shows that concern you to both local and international news that relates to you. From grassroots football to African children's programs. Heritage Television. We cover your social and special events like weddings, birthdays, church anniversaries, and so on, and broadcast them live on our apps and online. Heritage Television, broadcasting everything about culture and heritage. Heritage Television. We've got it covered. Do download our apps on both Android, iOS, and Windows mobile platform. Heritage Television, your very own TV station.